Yes, sir, we can boogie. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, welcome to the first proper episode of Sutherland Sportscast, sports content from both sides of the pond. And today we're going to be talking some football. We're going to be talking about the Euros. We're going to be talking about Steve Clarke's Scotland selection. Yes, that's right. Steve Clarke yesterday announced Scotland's squad for the upcoming Euro 2020 tournament. And today I'm going to analyse what he picked, why he picked them, and what it might mean tactically for us going forward in this tournament. So, just to get right underway, Steve Clarke named a 26-man squad, and that consisted of 3 goalkeepers in David Marshall, Craig Gordon and John McLaughlin. There were 5 centre-halves selected in Grant Hanley, Scott McKenna, Declan Gallagher, Liam Cooper and Jack Hendry. Fullbacks, there was 5 of them as well. There was Andy Robertson, who was always going to be the first name on the team sheet, the only world-class player Scotland has produced in recent memory, along with Kieran Tierney, typical, our 2 remotely considered world-class players, both playing the same position of left-back. But I digress. We also had Stephen O'Donnell, Nathan Patterson and Greg Taylor. In the midfield, we had John McGinn, another guy that was going to be right into the starting 11. We had Callum McGregor, Stuart Armstrong, Scott McTominay, Ryan Christie, John Fleck, Billy Gilmore and David Turnbull. Only 2 proper out-and-out wingers we selected were James Forrest and Ryan Fraser. And as the striking options, we had Lyndon Dykes, Shea Adams and Kevin Nisbet. So, which of these inclusions were a surprise and which ones weren't whatsoever? And let's also have a look at some of the notable absentees that were there and were usurped by other kind of more surprise selections. So, first name that instantly kind of springs to my mind and goes, hey, what is Nathan Patterson's selection at right back? He was a Rangers player who, when James Tavernier got injured, he fit right in like a glove and has been really, really impressive for them this season. He's only 19 years old, I think, still very young, so it's good to see some young Scottish talent not only coming through but being given the opportunity to enter these squads. The surprise omission that I thought would have gotten ahead of him might have been Liam Palmer, but if you consider the form Sheffield Wednesday his team have been in, they were relegated from the Championship to League One. It's maybe not that much of a surprise the more you think about it, and I'm struggling to think of any other right backs that might have gone in. But I think Stephen O'Donnell probably will start. He's more experienced, and that's who Clarke has stuck with throughout the whole of the qualification campaign. So that's the first one came to mind. Andrew Considine also did not make the squad, and given who you've seen ahead of him, it's probably maybe not that much of a surprise. But given, you know, his cult status with the whole yes sir I can boogie thing, it'll be disappointing to see him not make the squad. Getting on to kind of there's 2 players that were not considered who would have been there if they weren't injured. First of all, Ryan Jack, and second of all, Kenny McLean. Now, Ryan Jack, while maybe not being the first name that comes off the lips of the Tartan Army, he is perhaps the player whose absence provides the worst operational headache for Steve Clarke, because he's the one, if you will, number 6 in midfield. The guy that maybe doesn't have a lot of attacking instincts, but he just sits in front of the defence and breaks up the play and plays a simple pass to kind of set up a new attack. So there's not really anyone else whose instinct, first of all, is to do that. Scott McTominay is probably going to come forward from the centre-half position that he's beginning to gel with well, and he'll probably play that number 6 role. That's not a problem, but then you create you know, a hole at centre half, and it has a knock-on effect on the rest of the midfield around them, how much more less freedom they're all going to have and how much more disciplined they're going to have to be in the middle of the park, you know, positionally and everything like that. Now, another omission that I want to kind of give a special mention to, he's never been capped yet, but he was developing a bit of a cult following over the last year, is the attacking midfielder Ryan Gauld. Now, anybody who's been following Scottish football long enough will remember him as the teenage kid that really pulled up trees at Dundee United. He was way overhyped, and then after the hype got real, he had offers from really big Premier League teams all over the place. He elected instead to get out of his comfort zone and move to Portugal instead, where he went to Sporting Lisbon, although he couldn't really crack into that team. So he was loaned to various other Portuguese teams before in 2019 getting a loan spell back to Hibernian. And when that didn't work out, we thought that's a real shame. The guy's career's kind of just falling apart. But to fair to him, after that, he went back to Portugal, went to, into the second tier of Portuguese football, and got his new team, Farense, I can never pronounce it. He got them promoted last season, and he got Player of the Month for the whole Portuguese league just last month. And yeah, it looked like he might be somebody who's a bolter for this squad. But that's not happened, and the fact that Farense would end up getting relegated despite Ryan Gould's best effort probably didn't help. But he's definitely put himself in the shop window with his performances this season. But alas, Euro 2020 is just a step too soon for him. So, there's a lot of people that maybe thought he might have got in, but that has not materialised. So, let's talk about the lineups I expect to see in the Euros. So I've kind of been looking through all the kind of lineups that Steve Clarke has put in since he became manager, and kind of like what kind of patterns emerged, and what formations he played, and kind of like different key personnel being injured. How did he respond to that? How did he reshuffle the squad? So what I've kind of found is, he likes his back three. That's something that comes out, and that is basically his way of getting both Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney. Both are probably our two best players, unfortunately, are both left backs, into the same squad. It's been a quandary that a couple of managers beforehand have had to deal with. Steve Clarke's way of dealing with it is playing Tierney on the left side of a back three and then playing Andy Robertson in a more advanced position. However, he does tend to revert to a back four if, and this happens quite regularly, one of those two get injured. So there's a lot of time where Tierney wasn't there, Robertson just moved to the left of a back four. That tends to be the adaptation that Clarke and other managers before him implemented. Hopefully that doesn't happen and we get Tierney and Robertson on the pitch at the same time, which means it's probably going to be a back three that he plays. The other kind of thing that springs to mind is maybe this is due to kind of injuries or whatever else, but he's not a big fan of proper wingers. He relies on Andy Robertson and Stephen O'Donnell as the right wing backs to create most of the width, and the people that play either in a front three are more inverted. He prefers to have his kind of creative number 10s on the wing. So those are the kind of findings just from looking through his previous team sheets that I have kind of found. And so this is the kind of lineup I expect to see Steve Clarke coming up with during these tournaments and the upcoming friendlies, with Luxembourg as one of them that sprung to mind, and the other friendly is also in the Netherlands. So before we play England, Croatia and the Czech Republic in no particular order. But these are the lineups that I expect to see. David Marshall is going to be in goal. There's a very clear hierarchy amongst the goalkeepers. Craig Gordon is the second choice and John McLaughlin's third. But David Marshall will start. Then for the back three that I mentioned, I expect Grant Hanley to be the right-handed on the right-hand side of the back three, and that would be anchored by Liam Cooper. He was injured the last few games, Liam Cooper, but he's the defender that is playing at the highest level for us. He's he got himself promoted with Leeds United, or Leeds United got promoted, and they didn't feel the need to move him on and get a better centre half. He's still fit right in. So for me, he is the anchor in the centre of that back three, and obviously Kieran Tierney will play on the left. It'll be Andy Robertson as the left wing back, and Stephen O'Donnell as the right wing back, unless Nathan Patterson really impresses in training. Wouldn't put it past him, but I think O'Donnell gets the nod. Now, with regards to the midfield, I think it will be John McGinn and Scott McTominay in the centre. Now, it's the front three where there is some serious debate as to what happens. Because I mentioned before, James Forrest is there as the option on the right-hand side. He's got the best pace, he's got more flair than a lot of the others, and him and Ryan Fraser on the left are the only two out-and-out wingers they have. And it certainly wouldn't be out of the question those two playing as the wingers. But then you lack creativity. You're relying on John McGinn, as well as the kind of wing backs. You're relying on John McGinn as being the box-to-box midfielder and being really, really energetic. Because I mentioned before, with Ryan Jack not being there, McGinn's going to have to be a lot more disciplined, but then he's also going to have to go up and create as well. So it's more likely that you're going to see a combination of Christie, Armstrong, or McGregor playing on one of those wings as well. And I'm really not sure how how you square that circle. That's something that, Steve Clarke will be testing out in friendlies. And then, who do you play up front? There's the choice between Lyndon Dykes, Shea Adams, and Kevin Nisbet. Now, first of all, one of the key omissions that I missed out earlier was Kevin Nisbet getting in ahead of Lawrence Shankland. Now, Shankland's obviously very, very prolific in the Scottish Championship. He moved up with Dundee United. They got promoted into the Premiership. He's maybe not quite been as prolific, but he's still kind of kept them up quite comfortably. But Kevin Nisbet has clearly been preferred, and at the Premier League level, he's maybe shown to be better than Shankland. Who knows? That's certainly the opinion that Steve Clarke has obviously come to with the squad selection. But I think Dykes and Adams are the two that are quite a good bit ahead of Nisbet in the pecking order for strikers. I'm a big fan of Shea Adams because I'm a big fan of strikers with a lot of pace. However, it wouldn't surprise me if Lyndon Dykes gets the nod ahead of both of them for his hold-up play. So that's kind of pretty much my opinions on the matter. But by all means, let me know what you think down in the comments below. You can always find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and of course YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and whether you have been watching or just listening, thanks for stopping by.